As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Sleeping with the Numbers Injury Report. My name is Pat and I'm joined with Alex Baxter, our licensed physical therapist for the show. And we're going to go through all the games for this upcoming weekend as well as a recap of last night and give you an update on what's going on injury-wise. So on Thursday, we saw the Rams beat the Seahawks, and we also saw Russell Wilson leave the game. He has a thumb injury, and it's been reported that he's going to miss multiple weeks. So, Alex, what is the current status with Russell Wilson, and what should we expect going forward?
So, Russell Wilson has a extensor tendon injury to his distal phalangeal joint that he got when he followed through, hitting Aaron Donald's, I believe, hand when he was following through with his pass.
Mm-hmm.
It will have to be in a splint for about 6 to 8 weeks to heal, so it can actually extend or straighten. He has something called a mallet finger extension injury, meaning it's just pretty much his fingertip is just bent forward. He can't straighten it. And it's pretty much the only way to heal it, like I said, is 6 to 8 weeks being in the split. So he's going to be out for a couple months.
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at anything betting-wise or anything fantasy football related, I would totally avoid the Seahawks from this point out. I don't think Geno Smith is going to provide you the same amount of production. If anything, if Chris Carson comes back healthy, maybe play him because they should be running the ball more. But I wouldn't start Alex Collins, wouldn't really bank too much on DK or Tyler Lockett at this point moving forward. So unfortunate news for the Seahawks, but hopefully Russ comes back this season and can help regain their status, because right now the NFC West is pretty difficult and losing him is going to really make it difficult moving forward. So the next game we're going to look at is the game in London, Jets and Falcons. The big name here is Calvin Ridley not playing because of personal reasons. Other than that, there's not really anybody listed on the injury report who's super relevant in terms of fantasy or should really influence the game. Elijah Moore's out, Russell Gage is out, Denzel Mims is out. But other than that, no one to note. So we're going to move on from that game. Dolphins and Buccaneers. Person note, Antonio Brown went on the injury report with a knee injury. He didn't practice on Friday, so keep note of that. Chris Godwin, he has a thumb injury, did practice. Devontae Parker, shoulder injury, he has a limited practice. Rob Gronkowski is the guy that we want to talk about because in terms of fantasy, he's a really good player in terms of, touchdown production from the tight end position. So, Alex, what are your thoughts on Gronk moving forward? He's listed with a ribs injury, didn't practice all this week, and he's projected to be out.
Yeah, so Rob Gronkowski has multiple broken ribs and also a small little puncture in his lungs from the broken ribs. So, sounds very dangerous, but they said he's going to be out about 6 to 8 weeks. He's probably have to be some type of split for the rib cage to keep those ribs stabilized. So, obviously, you have to probably put Gronk on injured reserve at this point, and they won't be back for about the same time frame as Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and I think moving forward for the Buccaneers, I'm not too worried about them from a betting standpoint. I still think they have a very good offense. If anything, I'm going to rely more on Chris Godwin and Mike Evans just because of the injuries to Gronk and Antonio Brown. So moving on to the next game, Saints and Washington. The big name to note is Antonio Gibson has a shin injury, limited practice for the week, listed as questionable. Alex, do you have any updates on Antonio Gibson?
So Antonio Gibson, like you said, listed as questionable. He has been playing on a stress fracture in his shin for pretty much the entire season, they said. It's not too serious, which is why he's been playing on it and hasn't been hurting him too bad. They're expecting him to be more on the side of playing on Sunday, but I would expect McKissick to probably get more reps, though.
Yeah, and I was about to say that McKissick was listed with an ankle injury. He was limited on Wednesday, but he's had 2 full practices, so he shouldn't have any type of injury designation for this week. Other name to note is Curtis Samuels with a groin injury. He's listed as limited, so if I'm starting him, if I have him for fantasy, I'm not going to start him, assuming that he's not going to play. Other than that, the rest of this game, it's mostly the Washington side that has the injuries. So if you have anybody in the Saints, you should be fine for this week. Eagles, Panthers, the big name still in this game is McCaffrey. He has that hamstring injury that he suffered from a few weeks ago. Wednesday, he was limited. Thursday, limited. Friday, did not practice, listed as doubtful. It seems like he's definitely going to miss this game. So Alex, do you think that Christian's going to still have multiple weeks left, or do you have any type of update on that?
Like I said a couple weeks ago when I was on, we didn't know what the grade of the hamstring injury was. It's now listed as grade 2 hamstring. It's usually a 6 to 8 week time frame as well. Seems like a lot of 6 to 8 weeks usually, but just the fact that he's been trying to play on it seemed like, this week in practice, it really did not seem like it went well. And I expect him to probably miss a couple more weeks, mainly because you don't want to, of course, you make that grade 3 hamstring injury. You want to keep him out and get until he's fully healed. You don't want to mess with that at all. So I would expect, obviously, he won't probably play Sunday, and probably, I would say, doubtful even for the next week.
Yeah, and I think that really hurts the Panthers because we've seen that the Eagles' offense is fairly decent this season, even though they don't want to run the ball. So it's going to put a lot of pressure on Sam Darnold to account for rushing touchdowns because clearly Chuba Hubbard's not doing that. So moving on to the next game, Patriots and Texans. Not really anybody of note outside of Brandon Cooks. He was listed for he did not practice because of rest. So if you saw anything about him being held out of practice, it's just rest related. But either way, I probably wouldn't play him at all just because we know that Davis Mills is not the best quarterback. So I would avoid Brandon Cooks regardless of he's just resting or not. Okay, so next game we got Packers and Bengals. Aaron Jones had an ankle injury. He was limited in practice. However, he's not expected to miss the game, so we're not really going to dive into him. One guy I do want to talk about, though, is T. Higgins. He has a shoulder injury, limited all week. We're not really sure in terms of him going to play. So, Alex, do you have anything about T. Higgins?
T. Higgins, it's kind of weird. They came out and said that Bengals came out and said no injury destination, which I don't really know. It means questionable, doubtful. But he was a full participant in Friday's practice, so I would expect him to play Sunday against the Packers.
And then the other guy important to that Bengals offense is Joe Mixon with an ankle injury. He didn't practice at all this week. So is there any update on Joe?
Like you said, didn't practice at all. It seemed like it was more of a precautionary thing. He's listed as questionable at the moment. They're going to give another evaluation of his ankle today on Saturday before the matchup against the Packers. So there's not enough really detail to really say he's going to play or not. It all depends on what's going to happen today. So I would really check, on your phone, laptop, Sunday morning to see what his status is going to be.
Yeah, and if I'm doing anything betting wise, the loss of Joe Mixon really hurts your offense because we saw last week what the Packers did to Pittsburgh in terms of the passing game. So I would be highly concerned if the Bengals show up with Samaje Perine and can't run the ball. So if you're doing fantasy, definitely throw in any Bengals wide receiver or even CJ Uzoma because they're going to need to throw the ball a lot and it's going to be a lot of opportunity because they're not going to go anywhere with the run. So I'd even consider doing T. Higgins if he's, he did show up in practice on Friday and he should be at least in the game. We'll see how long he lasts for, but if you don't have anybody else from the Bengals and you want to play T. Higgins, I don't think it's a horrible idea. Next game, AFC South matchup, Titans and Jags. The big one to look at here are the wide receivers for the Titans. A.J. Brown had a hamstring injury, as we all know. He was limited on Wednesday, but full practice Thursday and Friday. So it looks like he should be available. We'll find out for sure tomorrow. But one guy who we're not sure about is Julio Jones. He hasn't practiced all week. And Alex, I wasn't sure if there had been anything that came out about Julio as of now.
Just yesterday, he's actually ruled out for Sunday's game against Jacksonville. So, I would look to see A.J. Brown will probably get a lot of targets on Sunday. So I'd definitely Julio Jones will be out, though.
Yeah, so for sure, if you have A.J. Brown on your team, definitely throw him in there because of that increased volume. Nick Westbrook, I can't even say his last name, Ikine. We're going to find out if I got it right or not. He also had a hamstring injury. He was limited on Thursday, but practiced. So he's given a questionable designation. So if he's in there as well, you might want to add him because he's going to receive some target share. Derrick Henry did not practice on Thursday, but that's due to rest. So he should be fine and good to go. And other than that, there's no one else of value to really note. Carlos Hyde is the only person for the Jags, and he was a full practice. Moving on to Broncos, Steelers, I think someone that we really need to talk about is Ben. He had a pec injury and also a hip injury. He's just basically falling apart at this point. He didn't practice on Wednesday, but he was a full participant Thursday and Friday. And I guess my question for you, Alex, is do you think Ben's actually healthy, or are they just going to trot him out there and hope it works?
I think they're going to draw him out there and hope it works. He's 39. He's looked terrible. I'm a big Ben fan, but he's really looking like his age recently. His pec injury is, I think it's just something that's been bugging him all season so far. But he is listed to play against the Broncos, though.
Yeah, we'll have to monitor that, because if we know Ben better than most people, because we are Steelers fans, there will be an abrupt moment where he just disappears from the sideline and they're going to throw Mason Rudolph out there. And that's what every Steelers fans, that's everyone's nightmare, is when that moment happens, because you never know what is actually going on. So we'll just have to monitor him through the game, and hopefully the line can protect him, because I'm really concerned with the Broncos defense obliterating him and re-aggravating whatever's bothering him at that point in time. On the other side of the ball, Teddy Bridgewater had a concussion. He was taken out of the game last week. He was limited on Thursday, but he was a full participant on Friday, so he was listed as questionable. I think regardless of who the starting quarterback is in there for Denver, I think that it won't necessarily matter. Teddy's obviously more competent, but Drew, he was a second-round pick. People can give him crap for all he wants, but he does have good games, and the Steelers defense likes to give it up in terms of passing yards whenever they're playing a bad quarterback. So I don't think it matters who the quarterback is for Denver. In terms of the Steelers, though, wide receiver Chase Claypool, hamstring injury, limited on Wednesday and Thursday, and he was a full participant on Friday. So it looks like Chase is going to play. Is that what you think, Alex?
Yeah, he's listed. He'll be playing this week against the Broncos. But, of course, because the Steelers, more groin injuries, James Washington is listed out this week with a groin injury. That's their, 50th groin injury so far this year. So I'm not sure what's happening with the Steelers with groin injuries. Another player for the defense, Cam Sutton, will also be out this week. So that's the 6th or 7th starter for the Steelers defense that will be hurt this year. Also, I know a lot of people have Steelers for their fantasy defense, and it just keeps getting worse for them.
Yeah, and people don't really know much about Cam Sutton. He was kind of lingering as this guy that we never knew if he was actually going to play when they drafted him out of Tennessee. But since Steven Nelson and Mike Hilton left, he's been a pretty good, asset to that defensive back group. And it's really concerning because Joe Hayden's the only quarterback that's actually good. And if Cam Sutton's out, which you just said he was, that makes me really concerned that Teddy Bridgewater is actually going to have a really good throwing game, because we're also seeing that Melvin Gordon was limited, listed as questionable. If he doesn't play, we saw Javonte Williams can kind of handle the running back game, but I think Melvin's definitely the more consistent running back for this group. So I would expect Denver to throw the ball a lot.
Yeah, and St. Pierre is his backup for Cam Sutton, and he's not even close to Cam Sutton. So I expect Bridgewater to be throwing his way for sure.
Yeah, hopefully Cortland Sutton plays. He's listed as questionable. Other than that, Juju has a rib injury. He is listed as good to go, but like we talk about, sometimes these guys can aggravate injuries and just disappear real quick. So just watch out for Juju. If you have him on fantasy, he may or may not last the whole game. Next game up, NFC North, Lions and Vikings. The big one to note is Dalvin Cook. He had that ankle injury. He didn't practice Wednesday or Thursday, but was limited Friday, and he's listed as questionable. Is there any type of update on Dalvin Cook's ankle sprain?
So Dalvin Cook, of course, still in the ankle injury, listed as questionable. Dalvin Cook stated that he's feeling better, but he's not 100%. He's listed on the right side of questionable about playing, but it sounds like Madison, it sounds like he'll get probably more reps. So I would really look out and see maybe Sunday morning once again, see what his status is. But it sounds like he will be playing, though. He'll at least try to.
Yeah, and I think if you're an owner of Dalvin Cook, I'd be really hesitant to start him just because we have seen that he has not done very well in recent history. When he is listed with an injury, he just kind of disappears. So I wouldn't rush to start him if I don't have to, especially because, if the Vikings are going up early, which we expect them to against the Lions, they shouldn't feel obligated to play him the whole game anyways.
Probably smart for them to just play Masson more this week.
Yeah, if you're going to blow out the Lions, why would you risk injuring your star player any further? But going to the other side of the ball, both running backs for the Lions have some type of designation. Both are listed as questionable and had limited practices. So we know DeAndre Swift is the number one. So what do you think about DeAndre Swift playing this week?
So I'm just looking at DeAndre Swift. He's been questionable pretty much all year, but he's once again on the right side of questionable. Sound like he's going to be playing. I don't know how many reps he's really going to get. I would, once again, kind of like a Dalvin Cook situation. I would really be careful on playing him. He could obviously re-aggravate his injury, his groin injury, during the game, but sounds like he's on the right side of playing though.
Yeah, and I think if you have any of the running backs for the Lions, I would be hesitant to throw them out there this week, just for the fact that I don't think this is going to be a competitive game, and it should be a lot of throwing for Jared Goff. Speaking of that, TJ Hawkinson limited at practice, so if you have him for fantasy, I would also be hesitant as well. I would just avoid the Lions in general in terms of anything involving bets or fantasy, because it does not seem like they are set to have much success this week. Next game, we don't have to really get into this one. Browns and Chargers. We had several guys that are big names: Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler, Odell Beckham, David Njoku. They all were listed with injuries. The only person on this list who has any type of designation right now is Njoku, but I don't consider him a huge fantasy value. We've seen that the Cleveland tight ends don't really get that much production. So if he doesn't play, it's not the end of the world, but Allen, Eckler, and Beckham are all good to go. So we can move on from this game. Bears and Raiders is a pretty lengthy injury list, but for the most part, these are all guys that can play. They all had full practices: Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, Darnell Mooney, Hunter Renfrow, Damian Williams. I think everybody would have been a little bit concerned if Damian Williams actually had an injury, because he's really the only running back right now that the Bears have. We did find out that Justin Fields is going to be the starter, so we don't really have to talk about Andy Dalton. He did fully practice, so if Fields does suck, we can't expect Andy Dalton to come back into the game. But I don't really see it happening. So one guy that I want to bring up real quick is David Montgomery, because obviously he's going to be out for the foreseeable future. And can you give us a little update on what his knee injury is really like?
So I was trying to find anywhere. The Bears are just not giving too much detail about what happened specifically with his knee injury. All I know is he will be out for 4 to 5 weeks. Damian Williams will be the starting running back for the Bears. And with Fields playing, I expect them to run more instead of Fields throwing it. So Damian Williams might be a good little pickup for fantasy.
Yeah, and I think everyone's going to try to rush to go get Darnell Mooney based on his game last week. But people should remember that Allen Robinson's still on that team. And regardless of how often these quarterbacks have chemistry issues in the beginning, it should pan out. Everybody finds their little safety blanket and they just throw the ball to them. And eventually Justin Fields will grow out of that. So I wouldn't give up on Allen Robinson yet, but I'm not playing Damian Williams. I don't think it's going to work out. I think that people are banking that he's going to get a lot of rushing attempts, but the Raiders' run defense is decent. I wouldn't be too shocked if they kept him under 100 yards or even under 50 yards. So I would expect Justin Fields to have to throw the ball a lot this week. Next game up, NFC West matchup, 49ers Cardinals. DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, and James Conner all rested, so they're good to go. Speaking of James Conner, he looks like he's going to be the starting running back this week. Chase Edmonds, unfortunately, has a shoulder injury. He did not practice Wednesday, Thursday, limited on Friday, so he's listed as questionable. Alex, is there anything in terms of a shoulder injury that we should be really concerned about for Chase Edmonds?
Yeah, shoulder injury, game time decision.
Okay, so if I'm doing fantasy, I'm going to play James Conner. I'm not going to play Chase Edmonds, because we just kind of talked about this with Dalvin Cook. You don't want to throw out your number one running back with an injury designation and run him to the ground and potentially make it worse. James Conner is a good fantasy option. He's been outscoring Chase Edmonds in the past 2 weeks anyways. Elijah Mitchell, he was a full participant in practice. We don't know if it matters, because Trey Sermon was the starting running back last week, and I'm not playing any running back for the 49ers. But one guy I did want to talk about from San Francisco is George Kittle. Hasn't practiced at all. Do you think he's going to play this week, Alex? So
it sounds like Kittle going with a nagging calf injury. He did not practice Wednesday through Friday. He's listed as doubtful, so I'm going to agree. I highly doubt he'll be playing Sunday.
Yeah, and Jimmy Garoppolo is also confirmed as out. We know Trey Lance is going to start, but I think that's concerning if Trey Lance has a bad start, because Arizona's defense we've seen can be really hot and can be really bad. So depending on what he gets, Trey Lance might be in for a world of hurt, and it's always good as a team to have that guy as your backup that you can bring in to kind of recover the game. So if Jimmy's not going to play, then that's not good for San Francisco. Up next, Giants Cowboys. Not really much to talk about here. Everything's pretty cut and dry. Saquon Barkley should play. He was limited on Wednesday, but full participant Thursday. Amari Cooper, he was limited, but he does not have a designation this time. Same thing with Zeke. Same thing with Kenny Galladay. Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton are both out though, so something that I would look into is if you can find Evan Ingram or Kadarius Toney. If you need somebody as a passing option for the Giants team, I would pick one of those guys, but I would probably avoid throwing them out there. Daniel Jones has been pretty good, but we've seen that he doesn't really need to throw to anybody in particular to get those fancy points. So you can play Toney if you want. He should have increased volume like he did last week, but I don't know if it's worth playing. I would expect the Cowboys to do pretty well in this game, and Zeke and Tony Pollard should get a lot of work. Next up, pretty good game could be potential AFC Championship game. Bills and Chiefs. Tyreek Hill was a full participant, so he's good to go. Stephon Diggs not practice, but that was rest. Same thing with Emmanuel Sanders, so not much to report there either. In our last game, Colts and Ravens. Carson Wentz, he has ankles, not just an ankle injury. He has ankles, but he was a full participant Friday. We talked about him in our last episode, Alex, but do you think that Carson Wentz is still going to be in a situation where his ankles are at least going to affect his gameplay?
Oh, I'm sure it will, especially being mobile. Probably try to stay, in the pocket as much as possible. I still am pretty dumbfounded that he injured both his ankles in the same game. I think he's looked pretty decent in practice this week, so I guess we'll see what he does Sunday.
Yeah, and something else to note is that Nyheim Hines was limited in practice. But not that it necessarily matters because he doesn't have a designation, but we've seen an increased utilization of Jonathan Taylor. So I was one of the people who made the mistake of trying to get Nyheim Hines off of waivers, hoping that because Jonathan Taylor was falling apart that he would get any type of work, and it has not panned out that way at all. So if you have Nyheim Hines, you can probably drop him at this point and not, have any type of effect to your team. But overall, I think that the Ravens should beat up on the Colts. So I would expect Carson up to throw the ball a lot anyways. And with his ankles as a problem, I think that it's going to be a bad week for the Colts. But other than that, that concludes all of our games. So we really appreciate your time. Thanks for listening to us. So as always, we like to end the show talking about the people that we affiliate with. So the first affiliate that we have is Monkey Knife Fight. If you use our link in the description below, you can get your first deposit matched instantly up to $100. And Monkey Knife Fight is fun. It's all prop bets. So if you're looking to switch it up from the daily platforms, definitely give Monkey Knife Fight a try. It's really fun. And we also are affiliated with BarkBox, which I talk about every time. We get a monthly subscription box for my dog, and they're always great because you can either choose the normal bark box, which is good for little dogs, or Super Chewer, which is good for 65-pound pit bulls like mine. Super Chewer is more of like a high value, high quality toy that, it's not necessarily as interesting, but it will definitely survive longer than some of the normal bark box toys would. And if you work and click our link below, you'll get a free extra month using our link. So we highly recommend you give it a try. I did the 6-month subscription. I'll probably renew again because we've had such great success, and we really appreciate everything that you guys do to support us. So, Alex, I enjoyed doing this episode with you, and I look forward to next week when we do the next injury report.
It's always a fun time.
Take care, everybody.